Bringing timeless Buddhist principles to everyday life, we explore mindfulness, compassion, and self-awarenessness in a modern context. By connecting ancient wisdom to today's challenges, we guide you toward inner peace, clarity, and resilience. Welcome to Radiant Wisdom.
Welcome to Radiant Wisdom, a space dedicated to exploring life's most profound truths and uncovering the tools we need to live with more clarity, balance, and purpose. In today's fast-paced world, emotions often feel like both a blessing and a curse. They can fill our hearts with joy or leave us overwhelmed with sorrow. They can inspire us to connect with others or pull us into a cycle of isolation and self-doubt. But what if I told you that understanding and working with your emotions could be the key to unlocking a deeper sense of peace and freedom? Today, we're diving into a fascinating and transformative topic: emotions, seen through the lens of Buddhist wisdom. Emotions are such an integral part of our lives, yet how often do we pause to reflect on what they really are? Why do we experience them the way we do? And why do they have such power to shape our thoughts, actions, and even our sense of self? In our time together, we'll explore how emotions arise, how they affect us, and most importantly, how we can navigate them with grace and understanding. This isn't just about suppressing emotions or pretending to feel happy all the time. It's about learning to see emotions for what they truly are: temporary, ever-changing, and ultimately manageable. By mastering this perspective, we can stop being controlled by our emotions and start using them as stepping stones toward a more mindful, fulfilling life. Now, before we dive into the heart of today's topic, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your emotions were running the show? Maybe you've been so consumed by anger that you said or did something you later regretted. Or perhaps you've experienced a wave of sadness so overwhelming that it felt impossible to climb out of it. These moments are part of being human, and they're more common than you might think, but they don't have to define us. Buddhist teachings offer a fresh and empowering way to approach emotions. Instead of labeling them as good or bad, Buddhism encourages us to see emotions as natural responses to the world around us. They're neither enemies nor allies, they're simply signals. And like any signal, they can guide us, teach us, and help us grow if we know how to listen. For example, think about the last time you felt jealousy. Maybe it was triggered by seeing someone achieve something you've always wanted: a promotion, a relationship, or even just a lifestyle that looks more appealing than your own. In that moment, the jealousy probably felt overwhelming. It might have sparked thoughts like, "Why can't that be me?" or "What's wrong with my life?" But what if, instead of drowning in those thoughts, you paused and asked yourself, what is this jealousy trying to tell me? Is it highlighting an unmet desire or a deeper insecurity I haven't addressed? When we approach emotions with curiosity instead of judgment, they become less of a burden and more of an opportunity for self-discovery. This is the essence of what Buddhism teaches us about emotions. They're not the problem. Our resistance to them, our attachment to them, and our identification with them, that's where the real challenge lies. Throughout this video, we'll break down the process of how emotions work and how they're tied to deeper mental patterns. We'll also explore practical tools to help you manage your emotions in a way that feels empowering and aligned with your true self. Whether you're struggling with anger, fear, jealousy, or even joy that feels fleeting, these insights can help you navigate your emotional landscape with greater ease. So, as we embark on this journey together, take a moment to ground yourself. Breathe deeply. Feel your feet on the ground. And remind yourself that you are not your emotions. They are simply a part of your experience. You have the power to observe them, understand them, and ultimately transform them. If this resonates with you, please like this video, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe to Radiant Wisdom for more content like this. Your support helps us continue creating thoughtful, educational content that makes a difference. And don't forget to comment below. I'd love to hear how you currently relate to your emotions and what you hope to learn from today's discussion. Now let's step into the heart of the matter. What are emotions, really? And how can we work with them instead of letting them work against us? Let's explore. The nature of emotions. Emotions are among the most powerful forces shaping our human experience. They can inspire us to create, connect, and grow. But they can also overwhelm us, cloud our judgment, and keep us trapped in cycles of suffering. From a Buddhist perspective, emotions are neither good nor bad. They simply exist, arising and passing like waves on the surface of the ocean. What matters most is not the emotion itself, but how we choose to relate to it. To truly understand emotions, we need to first recognize their transient nature. Buddhism teaches us that everything in life is impermanent. Our thoughts, our circumstances, and yes, even our emotions. Think about a time when you felt intense anger. In that moment, it may have seemed like the anger would consume you, as if it were the only thing that existed. But did it last forever? Probably not. Eventually it subsided, perhaps giving way to regret, sadness, or even relief. This ebb and flow of emotions is a natural part of life, and understanding this can help us approach them with greater equanimity. Emotions, according to Buddhist teachings, are closely tied to what are known as the kleshas, mental afflictions, that cloud our ability to see clearly. These include states like desire, aversion, and ignorance. Desire drives us to cling to things we think will make us happy, while aversion pushes us away from what we find unpleasant. Ignorance, on the other hand, blinds us to the true nature of reality, keeping us stuck in patterns of attachment and avoidance. Together, these kleshas fuel the emotional turbulence we experience on a daily basis. But here's the profound insight Buddhism offers. Emotions are not inherently negative. They only lead to suffering when we allow ourselves to be consumed by them. For instance, feeling sadness after a loss is natural, even healthy. It becomes a source of suffering, however, when we cling to that sadness, replaying memories or regrets over and over in our minds. Similarly, anger can be a powerful motivator for change when channeled constructively, but it can also lead to harm if left unchecked. One way to better understand emotions is to explore how they arise. Buddhist psychology outlines a fascinating process that begins with sensory contact. Every emotion starts with a stimulus, something we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or think about. This initial contact triggers a feeling tone known as vedana, which can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. For example, hearing your favorite song might evoke a pleasant feeling, while hearing harsh criticism might trigger an unpleasant one. From there, perception, or sanya, comes into play. This is the mental process of recognizing and labeling the experience. When you hear your favorite song, your mind identifies it, perhaps recalling happy memories associated with it. If you hear harsh criticism, your mind might label it as an attack, bringing up past experiences of feeling judged or misunderstood. Next, mental formations, or sankhara, shape how we respond. These are the patterns of thought, intention, and emotion that have been conditioned by our past experiences. If you've often been praised for your work, you might respond to criticism with defensiveness. If you've faced rejection before, you might withdraw or feel ashamed. Finally, all of this is brought into awareness through vijnana, or consciousness, the part of us that observes the entire process. This cycle of sensory contact, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness is happening all the time, often without us realizing it. By bringing awareness to this process, we can begin to interrupt it, creating space between the stimulus and our emotional response. This is the essence of mindfulness, learning to observe our emotions without immediately reacting to them. Another key insight Buddhism offers is the role of the ego in our emotional experiences. The ego is our sense of self, the me that wants to be liked, respected, and validated. It's the part of us that feels pride when we're praised and pain when we're criticized. But here's the thing. The ego is not fixed or permanent. It's a mental construct shaped by our thoughts and experiences. When we identify too strongly with the ego, we become more vulnerable to emotional highs and lows. By loosening our attachment to the ego, we can begin to experience emotions without letting them define us. So, what does this all mean for our daily lives? It means that emotions are not enemies to be fought or problems to be solved. They're teachers, guiding us toward greater self-awareness and understanding. By recognizing their impermanence, observing how they arise, and questioning the role of the ego, we can start to relate to our emotions in a healthier, more balanced way. Ultimately, emotions are a reminder of our humanity. They connect us to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. But they don't have to control us. With practice, we can learn to navigate them with wisdom and compassion, turning even the most difficult emotions into opportunities for growth. What drives our emotions? Have you ever wondered why we feel emotions so strongly? What is it that drives us to feel joy, anger, sadness, or fear? While emotions may seem to arise spontaneously, they are often deeply rooted in patterns of thought, experience, and perception. From a Buddhist perspective, emotions are not random. They are shaped by specific forces within us, and understanding these forces is key to mastering our emotional lives. At the core of what drives our emotions are three powerful mental afflictions known as the kleshas. These are desire, aversion, and ignorance. Think of them as lenses through which we interpret the world. These lenses are often distorted, leading us to react in ways that perpetuate emotional turbulence and suffering. Let's take a closer look at each one. First, there's desire, or attachment. This is the craving we feel when we believe something will bring us happiness or fulfillment. For instance, think about the last time you longed for something, a promotion, a new relationship, or even a material possession like a new phone. The anticipation of acquiring that thing likely created a sense of excitement or joy. But what happens if we don't get it? Or if we do and the satisfaction fades? That craving turns into disappointment or even dissatisfaction, sparking a new cycle of longing. Desire drives many of our emotional experiences, from fleeting happiness to deep frustration, because it is rooted in the belief that external things can provide lasting fulfillment. Next, there's aversion, the opposite of desire. This is the instinct to push away things we find unpleasant or threatening. Aversion shows up as fear, anger, or irritation when we encounter situations or people that challenge our comfort or expectations. For example, imagine being stuck in traffic on your way to an important meeting. The frustration you feel stems from an aversion to inconvenience and a desire for control. Instead of accepting the situation as it is, your mind resists it, fueling anger or stress. Aversion is a natural response, but when left unchecked, it can keep us trapped in cycles of negativity, preventing us from responding to challenges with clarity and composure. Finally, there's ignorance, perhaps the most fundamental driver of all emotions. In Buddhism, ignorance doesn't mean a lack of knowledge, but rather a misunderstanding of the true nature of reality. Specifically, it refers to the mistaken belief in a fixed, permanent self. This sense of self, the ego, is what makes us feel separate from others and fuels the need to defend, protect, and enhance our identity. For example, when someone criticizes your work, the ego reacts as though your entire self-worth is under attack. This misunderstanding creates a cascade of emotions like anger, shame, or sadness, all rooted in the illusion of a solid, unchanging self. Together, these three forces, desire, aversion, and ignorance, form the foundation of what drives our emotions. They shape how we perceive the world, how we react to it, and ultimately how we feel. But there's more to the story. Our emotions are also influenced by patterns formed over time. These patterns, or mental habits, are called samskaras in Buddhism. They are like grooves in the mind, etched deeper with every repeated thought or action. For example, if you've grown up feeling insecure about your abilities, you may have developed a habit of comparing yourself to others. This habit fuels jealousy or self-doubt whenever you perceive someone else as more successful or capable. Another important driver of emotions is the external world. Our environment, relationships, and experiences all play a role in shaping how we feel. However, it's not the external circumstances themselves that create emotions, it's our internal response to them. Two people might face the exact same situation but react in completely different ways. Why? Because their perceptions, habits, and emotional drivers are different. This is why Buddhism emphasizes looking inward to understand and transform our emotional responses. But let's not forget the role of the ego in all of this. The ego, or our sense of self, amplifies emotional experiences by tying them to our identity. For instance, when someone praises you, it's not just the compliment that makes you feel good, it's how the ego interprets it as validation of your worth. Similarly, when someone disagrees with you, the ego might perceive it as a personal attack, sparking anger or defensiveness. The more attached we are to the ego, the more we experience emotional highs and lows. So, what can we do with all of this knowledge? The first step is awareness. By recognizing how desire, aversion, and ignorance drive our emotions, we can begin to pause before reacting. Instead of immediately chasing what we want or resisting what we don't, we can ask ourselves, what is really happening here? Am I reacting out of habit or out of understanding? This moment of reflection is the key to breaking free from emotional patterns. The second step is cultivating mindfulness. When we observe our emotions without judgment, we can start to see them for what they are, temporary mental states, not permanent truths. By letting go of the need to cling or push away, we create space for clarity and peace. Understanding what drives our emotions doesn't mean we'll never feel them again, but it does mean we can stop being ruled by them. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can choose our responses with wisdom and compassion, transforming even the most challenging emotions into opportunities for growth and insight. The emotional mechanism, how it works. Emotions may feel mysterious, but from a Buddhist perspective, they follow a clear and logical process. A mechanism that unfolds in predictable stages. Understanding this process is like learning the blueprint of your emotional world. It empowers you to respond mindfully rather than being swept away by every wave of feeling. Let's break it down step by step. In Buddhist psychology, emotions arise through the interaction of the 5 aggregates, or skandhas, the components that make up our experience of self and the world. These aggregates help explain not only how emotions form, but also how we interpret and react to them. Here's how the mechanism works. 1. Sensory contact, phassa. Every emotion begins with sensory contact. This is the moment when one of our 6 sense bases, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or mind, encounters a stimulus. For example, you might hear a loud voice, see an intense expression on someone's face, or recall a memory. These moments of contact act as the spark that lights the emotional fire. Imagine this scenario. You receive a message from your boss, asking to discuss a project you've been working on. That message, whether it's an email, a text, or a phone call, is the initial sensory input that triggers your emotional mechanism. The content of the message, combined with your past experiences, sets the stage for what comes next. 2. Feeling Vedana. Once sensory contact occurs, it immediately generates a feeling tone, called Vedana. This is your initial reaction to the stimulus, and it falls into one of 3 categories: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This stage happens so quickly that we often aren't aware of it. For example, if the message from your boss is neutral in tone, you might not have an intense reaction right away. However, if the message feels ambiguous or critical, the feeling tone might be unpleasant, triggering a sense of unease. Conversely, if it's a message of praise, it may generate a pleasant feeling tone, sparking joy or pride. What's important to understand here is that this feeling tone is raw and instinctive. It's not yet influenced by thought or interpretation. It's simply your body and mind reacting to the stimulus at a basic sensory level. 3. Perception. The next stage is perception, or sana. This is where your mind begins to recognize and label the experience, drawing on past memories and knowledge. Essentially, it's where you make sense of the stimulus. For instance, when you see your boss's message, your mind starts interpreting it based on past experiences. If you've had positive interactions with your boss in the past, you might label the message as routine or even encouraging. But if your previous interactions have been stressful, your mind might label the message as a potential threat. At this stage, your emotional experience begins to take shape. You're no longer just feeling an instinctive reaction, you're starting to create a story around it. 4. Mental formations, sankhara. This is where emotions fully emerge. Sanchara, or mental formations, refers to the thoughts, intentions, and habitual patterns that arise in response to perception. These are shaped by your conditioning, your past experiences, beliefs, and mental habits. Let's return to the example. If you perceive the boss's message as critical, your mind might generate thoughts like, "I must have done something wrong," or "What if I'm in trouble?" These thoughts feed into the emotional response, creating feelings of anxiety or dread. On the other hand, if you interpret the message positively, you might think, "This could be great news," leading to excitement or confidence. At this stage, emotions like fear, joy, anger, or sadness fully manifest. The thoughts and emotions reinforce each other, often creating a feedback loop that intensifies your experience. 5. Consciousness vijnana. Finally, vijnana, or consciousness, comes into play. This is your awareness of the entire process. Consciousness is like the stage on which the drama of sensory contact, feeling, perception, and mental formation plays out. It's the part of you that observes the unfolding emotion, making it possible to recognize, reflect on, and potentially change your reaction. If you're practicing mindfulness, this stage is where you have the opportunity to pause and say, "Wait a minute, what's really going on here?" You can observe your feelings of anxiety, trace them back to your perception of the situation, and recognize that this perception might not be entirely accurate. With this awareness, you can choose to respond differently. The chain reaction of emotions. This process, sensory contact, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness, happens in an instant, often without us realizing it. Without mindfulness, we tend to react automatically, letting our emotions dictate our actions. For example, if anxiety takes over after reading your boss's message, you might immediately send a defensive reply or avoid the conversation altogether. But if you can observe the process with awareness, you create space to respond thoughtfully, breaking free from emotional reactivity. The beauty of understanding this mechanism is that it puts you back in the driver's seat. You don't have to be a passive participant in your emotional experience. By recognizing how emotions arise, you can interrupt the cycle before it spirals out of control. For example, when you notice an unpleasant feeling tone like anxiety, you can pause and ask yourself, "What's influencing my perception here? Am I jumping to conclusions? Is there another way to interpret this situation?" This simple act of questioning can help you shift from reactivity to intentionality. Empowering yourself through awareness. The emotional mechanism is not a mystery. It's a process that you can learn to observe and influence. By understanding how emotions work, you gain the tools to navigate them with greater clarity and wisdom. Emotions no longer have to control you. Instead, they become opportunities for insight and growth. With practice, you can transform even the most challenging emotions into moments of empowerment and transformation. This expanded section provides a detailed yet accessible breakdown of the emotional mechanism while staying true to the Buddhist perspective. Let me know if you'd like further refinement. The role of the ego in emotions. The ego plays a central role in how we experience and react to emotions. It's the part of us that says, "This is me," and it's deeply tied to our sense of identity. The ego wants to protect itself, to assert itself, and to preserve the story of who we believe we are. While the ego is not inherently bad, it often amplifies emotional reactions, creating unnecessary suffering. From a Buddhist perspective, understanding the ego's role in our emotional lives is essential for finding balance and liberation. What is the ego? In Buddhism, the ego is referred to as the false self, a mental construct that creates a sense of I and mine. It's the part of us that feels separate from the world and others, constantly seeking validation, recognition, and security. The ego thrives on attachment to our ideas, possessions, relationships, and even our emotional states. It's deeply intertwined with the three kleshas, desire, aversion, and ignorance, which fuel the emotional turbulence in our lives. For example, when someone praises you, the ego perks up and thinks, "Yes, I'm worthy, I'm important." This can create feelings of pride or happiness, but when that same person criticizes you, the ego feels threatened. It interprets the criticism as an attack on your worth, triggering anger, hurt, or defensiveness. In both cases, the ego ties your emotional state to external validation, making you vulnerable to the ups and downs of life. How the ego amplifies emotions. The ego acts as a magnifying glass for emotions, intensifying both pleasure and pain. It clings to positive emotions, wanting to hold on to them forever, and resists negative emotions, trying to push them away. This creates a cycle of attachment and aversion that can leave us feeling stuck. Take jealousy as an example. Imagine a colleague gets a promotion that you were hoping for. The ego steps in and says, "This should have been mine. I'm just as capable, if not more so." This narrative fuels feelings of envy and inadequacy, making the situation feel personal. But if you step back and look at the situation objectively, you might realize that the promotion isn't a reflection of your worth. It's simply a decision made in a specific context. The ego, however, doesn't want to see it that way. It thrives on comparison, constantly measuring your value against others. The ego also reinforces emotional pain by holding on to the past. For example, if someone hurt you years ago, the ego might replay the memory, creating a narrative of victimhood or resentment. Every time you revisit the memory, the emotion is reignited, keeping the wound open. The ego thrives on this story because it strengthens its sense of self. I was wronged, and that defines me. The illusion of the ego. From a Buddhist perspective, the ego is an illusion. It's not a fixed or permanent entity. It's a collection of thoughts, beliefs, and habits that we mistake for our true self. This illusion of separateness is a major source of suffering because it creates the false idea that we must protect and defend ourselves against the world. Consider how the ego reacts when things don't go as planned. If you fail at a project, the ego might say, "I'm a failure." If someone criticizes you, the ego might interpret it as, "I'm not good enough." But in reality, these are just thoughts, not absolute truths. The more we identify with the ego, the more we become entangled in its stories, which are often exaggerated or distorted. Breaking free from the ego's grip. So how do we loosen the ego's grip and find freedom from its emotional hold? Buddhism offers several practices to help us see through the illusion of the ego and respond to emotions with greater clarity and compassion. 1. Mindfulness. By practicing mindfulness, we can observe our thoughts and emotions without identifying with them. Instead of thinking, "I am angry," we can notice, there is anger arising. This subtle shift creates space between the emotion and our sense of self, allowing us to respond rather than react. 2. Self-inquiry. Question the ego's narratives. When you notice yourself feeling hurt or angry, ask, "What story is my ego telling me right now? Is it true? Is it helpful?" Often, you'll find that the ego's stories are based on assumptions or exaggerated fears. 3. Compassion. Cultivate compassion for yourself and others. When the ego feels threatened, it's often because it perceives a lack of love, security, or worth. By practicing self-compassion, you can reassure yourself that you are enough, just as you are. Extending compassion to others helps dissolve the barriers created by the ego, fostering connection instead of separation. 4. Meditation on non-self. Buddhist teachings on anatta, or non-self, remind us that the ego is not who we truly are. Through meditation, we can explore the transient nature of thoughts, emotions, and sensations, realizing that none of them define our essence. This insight helps us let go of the ego's need for control and validation, transforming emotions through ego awareness. Understanding the ego's role in emotions doesn't mean suppressing or rejecting the ego. Instead, it's about recognizing it for what it is, a mental construct, not the true self. When we see the ego clearly, we can navigate emotions with greater wisdom. Pride becomes gratitude, jealousy becomes inspiration, and anger becomes an opportunity for understanding. By loosening the ego's grip, we free ourselves from the cycle of attachment and aversion. We stop seeking happiness outside of ourselves and start cultivating it from within. This is the path to emotional freedom, one that leads to greater peace, clarity, and connection. The ego is a powerful force, but it doesn't have to control us. With mindfulness, self-awareness, and compassion, we can transform our relationship with the ego, turning it from a source of suffering into a teacher that guides us toward deeper wisdom and liberation. Practical steps to master emotions. Mastering our emotions isn't about suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It's about understanding them, observing them, and responding to them with wisdom and compassion. Buddhism offers a treasure trove of practical tools to help us navigate the emotional landscape with clarity and balance. Let's explore 5 steps you can take to cultivate emotional mastery. Step 1. Cultivate mindfulness, observing without judgment. Mindfulness, or sati, is the cornerstone of emotional mastery. It's the practice of paying attention to the present moment with curiosity and without judgment. Mindfulness allows you to observe emotions as they arise, rather than being swept away by them. For example, when you feel anger building, instead of immediately reacting, pause and take a deep breath. Notice how the anger feels in your body. Perhaps there's a tightness in your chest or heat in your face. Observe the thoughts accompanying the emotion. Are you replaying an event or creating a story of blame? By simply noticing the emotion, you create space between the stimulus and your response. This space is where choice lives. Practical tip: set aside 5 to 10 minutes each day to practice mindfulness meditation. Focus on your breath, and when thoughts or emotions arise, gently return your attention to the breath. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to stay present during emotional storms. Step 2. Label your emotions. Name it to tame it. One of the simplest yet most effective ways to manage emotions is to name them. This process, often called affect labeling, involves identifying and labeling the emotion you're experiencing. Research shows that labeling emotions can reduce their intensity and help you feel more in control. For instance, if you're feeling overwhelmed, take a moment to pause and say to yourself, "I'm feeling stressed," or "I'm feeling anxious." By doing this, you shift from being consumed by the emotion to observing it from a place of awareness. This small but powerful act helps you step out of reactivity and into a state of mindfulness. Practical tip: create a list of common emotions, anger, sadness, fear, joy, etc., and use it as a reference when you're struggling to identify what you're feeling. Over time, this practice builds emotional literacy, helping you better understand your inner world. Step 3. Investigate the root cause. Ask, don't avoid. Buddhism teaches that emotions often arise from deeper causes such as unmet needs, attachments, or fears. To master your emotions, it's essential to look beneath the surface and explore what's driving them. This is not about analyzing endlessly, but rather gently investigating the root of the emotion. For example, if you're feeling jealousy, ask yourself, what am I longing for? Is it recognition, love, or security? By understanding the underlying need, you can address it more skillfully, rather than reacting impulsively to the emotion. Practical tip: when a strong emotion arises, try journaling about it. Ask yourself questions like, what triggered this emotion? What need or fear might be fueling it? Is there another way to interpret this situation? Writing often reveals insights that aren't immediately apparent. Step 4. Practice compassion toward yourself and others. Compassion, or karuna, is a powerful antidote to difficult emotions like anger, jealousy, and resentment. When you feel overwhelmed by emotion, ask yourself, what would a kind response look like right now? This could mean offering yourself self-compassion by acknowledging that it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It could also mean extending compassion to others, recognizing that they too are navigating their own struggles. For example, if someone's actions upset you, try to see the situation from their perspective. What might they be going through? This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it helps you respond with empathy rather than retaliation. Practical tip: practice loving kindness meditation, metta. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and silently repeat phrases like, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be free from suffering. Then extend these wishes to others, including those who have challenged you. Over time, this practice softens emotional reactivity and cultivates inner peace. Step 5. Embrace impermanence. Let emotions flow. Buddhism teaches that everything in life, including emotions, is impermanent. No matter how intense an emotion feels in the moment, it will eventually pass. Recognizing this truth can help you stay grounded during emotional highs and lows. For instance, when you feel overwhelmed by sadness, remind yourself, this is a passing wave, not the entire ocean. Emotions are like weather patterns. They come and go, but they don't define the sky. By embracing impermanence, you learn to ride the waves of emotion without getting lost in them. Practical tip: when you're experiencing a strong emotion, visualize it as a wave. Imagine it rising, peaking, and eventually dissolving. This visualization reinforces the understanding that emotions are temporary and helps you stay calm during their intensity. Mastering your emotions doesn't happen overnight. It's a lifelong practice. But by cultivating mindfulness, labeling your emotions, investigating their roots, practicing compassion, and embracing impermanence, you can transform your relationship with your emotions. Instead of being ruled by them, you'll learn to navigate them with wisdom and grace. Each emotion, no matter how challenging, is an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. By approaching your emotions with curiosity and kindness, you can unlock deeper clarity and resilience. Remember, you are not your emotions. They are simply visitors passing through your awareness, and with practice, you can welcome them, learn from them, and let them go. Start small. Choose one of these steps to focus on today. Notice how it changes your relationship with your emotions. And as you continue this journey, know that every effort you make brings you closer to inner peace and emotional freedom. A practical case study. Understanding emotions conceptually is one thing, but applying these insights to real-life situations is where the true transformation happens. Let's walk through a practical case study to see how Buddhist principles can help us navigate an emotionally charged experience with wisdom and clarity. Imagine this. You've been working hard for months on a project, pouring your time and energy into every detail. A promotion opportunity opens up in your department, and you feel confident you're the most deserving candidate. But when the decision is announced, your colleague gets the promotion instead. Your stomach drops. A wave of jealousy and disappointment washes over you, followed by frustration and self-doubt. Why not me, you think? What did I do wrong? You feel the sting of rejection and the growing bitterness toward your colleague. What started as an ordinary day is now consumed by strong, uncomfortable emotions. Step 1. Mindfulness. Acknowledge the emotion. The first step in addressing this situation is to pause and recognize what you're feeling. In this moment, mindfulness becomes your anchor. Instead of suppressing the jealousy or letting it spiral out of control, simply notice it. You might say to yourself, "I feel jealous. I feel disappointed. My chest feels tight and my mind is racing with thoughts." This simple act of naming your emotions, without judgment, helps you step back from them. You're no longer drowning in the emotion, you're observing it with curiosity. Mindfulness creates the space to understand your reaction. It's not about labeling yourself as a jealous person or failing for feeling this way. It's about acknowledging this is what I'm experiencing right now. Step 2. Investigation. Explore the root cause. Once you've acknowledged the emotion, the next step is to investigate its root. Why are you feeling this way? What's beneath the surface? Ask yourself, why does this promotion matter so much to me? Is it about the title, the recognition, or the financial reward? Am I attaching my self-worth to this opportunity? Maybe you realize the jealousy stems from a desire to feel valued and appreciated for your hard work. Or perhaps it's rooted in a fear of being overlooked or not measuring up. This step is about digging deeper, not to criticize yourself, but to understand the needs and fears driving your emotions. When you recognize that the promotion isn't just about the role itself, but about your deeper desire for validation, it becomes easier to approach the situation with clarity and self-compassion. Step 3. Shift perspective. Reframe the situation. Now that you understand the root of your feelings, it's time to shift your perspective. Instead of clinging to the ego's narrative, "I deserved this more than my colleague," consider a broader view. Ask yourself, is my worth defined by this one event? Can I see this situation from a different angle? Perhaps your colleague's promotion doesn't diminish your contributions. It simply reflects their fit for this specific role at this specific time. Recognizing the impermanence of this moment can help you release the grip of disappointment and jealousy. You might also reflect on the efforts your colleague put in to earn the promotion. Practicing mudita, or sympathetic joy, allows you to feel happiness for their success, even when it's bittersweet for you. It doesn't mean ignoring your own feelings. It means cultivating empathy and seeing the bigger picture. Step 4. Compassion. Toward yourself and others. In moments of emotional difficulty, compassion is a powerful tool. Start with self-compassion. Acknowledge the disappointment you feel and remind yourself that it's okay to struggle. You're human, and this is part of the human experience. Then, extend compassion to your colleague. Remember that their success doesn't take anything away from you. They too have their own journey, challenges, and aspirations. Recognizing this can soften feelings of resentment and create space for connection rather than division. A simple internal mantra can help. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I find peace. May my colleague also find happiness and success. Step 5. Take action. Transform emotion into growth. Finally, use this experience as an opportunity for growth. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this disappointment to grow stronger and more resilient? Perhaps this is a chance to reevaluate your goals and career path. If the promotion revealed a desire for more recognition, consider ways to showcase your strengths or communicate your ambitions more effectively. If it highlighted feelings of self-doubt, explore practices that build confidence and self-worth. Buddhism teaches that every experience, even the painful ones, is an opportunity to learn and grow. By shifting your focus from the external event to your internal response, you turn this moment into a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block, a path toward peace. By following these steps, mindfulness, investigation, perspective shifting, compassion, and action, you've transformed what could have been a source of prolonged suffering into a moment of insight and growth. The initial sting of jealousy may not vanish immediately, but it loses its power over you. Instead of feeling stuck, you've gained a deeper understanding of yourself and the situation. This process doesn't just apply to promotions or career disappointments. It's a roadmap for navigating any emotional challenge, whether it's conflict in relationships, fear of failure, or even feelings of unworthiness. The key is to approach each situation with curiosity, kindness, and a willingness to grow. In the end, emotional mastery isn't about eliminating emotions, it's about learning to dance with them, using them as guides to help you live with greater clarity, compassion, and purpose. This expanded case study offers a relatable scenario, practical steps, and actionable insights, aligning with Buddhist principles to help the audience see how to apply these lessons in their daily lives. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments. Emotions are part of what makes us beautifully human, but they don't have to control us. By cultivating mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we can transform even the most challenging emotions into opportunities for growth. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to Radiant Wisdom. And let us know in the comments what's one emotion you've learned to navigate better. Until next time, may you find peace, clarity, and joy in every moment. Take care.